Solange Mougin is with me here on set now for a review of the main stories in the French and international press. And Solange, right across the globe, everyone's talking about this. We mentioned it yesterday before we got this picture of the black hole, but now we have got this first picture of a black hole.
Yeah, and it is an awe-inspiring image because it's a photograph of the unphotographable. And to a great degree, the unknowable. It is, as the Catalan paper Ara calls it, the door to the universe. The image is actually the compilation of data taken from astronomers from 40 different countries that relied on telescopes from 8 different observatories around the world. A single telescope was not strong enough for the image. The French paper Telegram calls it vertigineux, or vertigo-inducing, for the cosmic monster is 500 trillion kilometers away from the Earth, and its width measures 40 billion kilometers. Meanwhile, the German paper Der Tagesspiegel says that it is a historic day for astronomy. Historic, but also a bit spooky. For the paper cites one of the scientists who worked on the project as saying the image looks a little bit like the gates of hell. In that vein, Huffington Post actually tells us that the Twitter sphere is going crazy about how the image resembles that of another one found in the films The Lord of the Rings, the Eye of Sauron.
Yeah, very, very true. Lord of the Rings fans aren't the only ones going crazy with memes of the black hole. The awe-inducing nature of the image really inspiring some papers to superimpose their national politics on this photograph.
Yeah, they are.
I can imagine what this is about. Okay.
Let's take, for example, Brexit.
Yeah, I thought it might be.
Yep. Today's commuter daily Metro reads, "What Brexit looks like from space." The paper tells us that Theresa May deal looks as far, far away as a black hole now that they say the EU dictates Britain's future. A sentiment perhaps better illustrated by a cartoon from Christian Adams of Theresa May being sucked into a black hole now that her request for an extension has been granted. Now, the Times also picks up on the black hole sentiment, saying that May's extension until October 31st and her defiance of Tory rebels, for she's pledged to stay on until the deadline or until her deal gets passed, is, quote, another inescapable black hole. In regard to May's pledge to remain Prime Minister, The Independent puts it simply that she is going nowhere.
Well, another divisive politician who's sticking around for the moment anyway, Benjamin Netanyahu, of course. He managed to win a 5th mandate in yesterday's elections in Israel.
Yeah, and for Il Manifesto, the Italian paper, Netanyahu is the black hole, or Il Buco Nero. The paper condemns Netanyahu's end of campaign promise to annex Israeli colonies in the West Bank, a move they say would essentially do away with the possibility of a 2-state solution. For the Lebanese paper L'Orient Le Jour, Netanyahu has won big. Their headline reads, "The winner takes all." That the incredibly tight vote, which was largely a referendum on the prime minister, still ended up in his favor, and this despite multiple corruption probes that are hanging over his head.
Sticking with the space theme, a little bit closer to home, in France, the press is widely covering plans by the government to privatise Paris's main airports. This is Libération. I'm going to talk about this in just a moment, aren't you? But it's in lots of the papers.
It is. It's in a lot of papers today. Because France's National Assembly is voting on whether or not to privatise Paris's main airports, that's Charles de Gaulle and Orly. A proposal that would, in the short term, bring big bucks, or 10 billion euros, into the state's coffers, according to Le Parisien. But many people are very wary of the idea, and many MPs on the left and on the right are joining forces against the project. L'Opinion tells us about this across the aisle unity. They call it improbable and unprecedented, with MPs all in the same boat or airplane. All are protesting against the privatization and calling for the issue to be subject to a national referendum, and there are favorable winds for that, according to the paper. In that vein, as you were mentioning earlier, Libération says, en piste citoyen, or get on track people. Now, this is a play on words with the word runway, which in French is la piste. Now, Libération says that privatizing CDG and Orly airports is not only an issue when it comes to national security and sovereignty, but it's also a simply bad math, according to Libération, or the steal of Macron's mandate. The paper says the government would lose out on the 170 billion euros they make now from the airport every year, and the billions of funds that they would get for it would actually be frozen, and that even U.S. airports, where such things you would expect to happen, are public spaces, and they argue that Macron here is even trumping Trump.
Talking of Donald Trump and Emmanuel Macron, they visited Mount Vernon last year, this visit, wasn't it? But it's actually spilling something today in the American press. Why is this?
Yeah, it's been leaked that last April, when Macron and Trump had a guided tour of Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon is George Washington's home. Trump, unlike the Macrons, was not at all interested in learning about the property. The Macrons actually knew more about its history than the U.S. president did. But the U.S.'s 45th president did have some posthumous advice for America's first president, according to multiple sources. He lamented that Washington's name wasn't scrawled on the residence. Trump said, quote, if he was smart, he would have put his name on it. You've got to put your name on stuff or no one remembers you.
Okay.
To which the tour guide reminded President Trump that the U.S.'s national capital is named after George Washington.
Yes, exactly. Well, he's going to put Trump Tower on everything nowadays instead anyway, isn't he? To match the launch Moujan, of course, with the papers out on France 24.